Hello and welcome to a new live stream. It's me, Martin, and today we have quite a bit of a schedule. One moment, I'm going to get a few things sorted. Um, couple of things before we start our live stream, and one is to connect this with Instagram. So hopefully we can get Instagram started. But if you're joining for the first time, my name is Martin, and I tend to do a live stream as regularly as possible. This is the second episode of 2025, and yeah, we'll see how today is going. But bear with me whilst I get Instagram started on the live stream as well. So let's copy that over. Let's get started, and hopefully, boom, we're ready to go. Okay, thank you ever so much for joining. And let me just start off with today, and I'm just going to be sharing my slides. So, one moment. I'm just bringing over my slides. Should have went through this myself. And where's my presentation? Just finding it now. So as we've got a bit of a schedule today, let's see if I can bring my slides up. Today I'm connecting it with my main camera that I use to make my videos, so hopefully the quality is better and you enjoy the quality as well. If you can, feel free to share any questions, or if you've got any comments, then feel free to share those as well. I'll be happy to answer any queries that you have. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through, in this episode, 3 simple steps to grow your online teaching, your own online teaching business with no experience needed. A couple of ideas that I have and recommendations, and hopefully this will help when it comes down to building your own online English teaching business as well. So, who am I? Well, if you don't know me, my name is Martin Sketchley. I've been involved with English teaching for over 19 years, heading into 20 years now. And I've taught in class as well as online. I've got about 10 years online teaching experience, and these include with Preply, Tutor ABC, Twinix, Hudiang, etc., etc. And I first started out teaching online with Tutor ABC about 10 years ago. I moved on to Hudiang, and then after Hudiang, I started working for myself, as well as sourcing students from Preply and teaching some students on Twinix. Okay, so that's me. Now, 3 steps. The first step, when it comes down to growing your own online business, and I'm going to start out with this. So, setting up your own teaching business, and I'm going to start out with a bit of a story. So, when it comes down to any service or product that you're looking at, you're going to be looking at a variety of things. So, how do you choose a plumber, for example? And if you're going to be choosing a plumber, then what would make sense is to source out recommendations. And you can do this by going online, going to Which, for example, or you could just type in the name of the business, and if there's any Google reviews, then you'll get an idea of that. But when it comes down to a plumber, what happens is usually when you choose a plumber is that you will start to speak to friends and family to see what recommendations they have. And it's the same for potential English students. When a student wants to learn English with you, they want to try and find a recommendation. Um, they want to try and find out a few things and see if you're a good teacher or not. Okay. Now, bear with me. I'll just bring up a question that I've got from Natasha Mini. How do you handle stubborn students? Great question. Well, stubborn students. So students who think they know possibly better than you. Well, how would I handle students that are a little difficult, I would say? Um, for difficult students, for example, um, I would remind them, particularly students who think they know potentially better than you, you know, that they're there to learn. And as a teacher and a learner, then you can try and think about what's best for them. And you can negotiate with them. And if they feel slightly different, then you've got to respect that. You can always invite them and get their own ideas, um, if it's one to one. And if you do have one to one students that are slightly challenging, then you can negotiate with them and find out a little bit more about what they want from their online classes. Now, if it's in a group environment and you're teaching a class, say a face to face class, and you've got some difficult students, what I would recommend is that I speak to that student individually and find out a bit more about what they want. And for example, last semester I did have a student who was slightly challenging, slightly difficult, but I spent time with that student to make sure that they're happy with whatever they want from their online, from their face-to-face classes. I wouldn't place that student into a particular pressure and say, right, you know, I disagree with you, but I would speak to that student individually, and hopefully that would uh, start that interaction and mutual respect with the student. So I hope that helps, Natasha. But very good question. Thank you ever so much. Keep them coming. I'll be happy to answer any that you have. So let's get back to our presentation. So here, when it comes down to your business and growing your business, what you need to think about, particularly when it comes down to reviews and recommendations, is have a think about what your particular niche is. What do you want to try and achieve when it comes down to online teaching? Are you more comfortable teaching business English, exam English, general English, medical English, legal English, airline English? It's best not to be a jack of all trades. Because you'll be a master of none. But if you are able to choose a particular niche that you're happy with, then you will feel more enthusiastic, more comfortable teaching that particular niche. And hopefully that comes across with potential students, and they're more likely to recommend you to their friends or family or other people that they know when they speak to someone and say, look, I'm really interested in exam preparation. Do you know a particular teacher? They will go, yep, this was my teacher and this is who I would recommend. And so try and choose your niche. Have a think about it. What do you want to try and teach? What is your passion when it comes down to English teaching, online English teaching? And give it some thought before just diving in and just teaching general or everything and not really thinking more about it. Now, another thing that you need to consider is what sort of tools you're going to be using. You're going to be using external camera like I have here. If you don't know, bear with me. There we go. If you don't know what these tools are, it's always best to try and find out a bit more about it. So, for example, Calendly is a scheduling tool that potential students could use when it comes down to booking classes with you. Zoom, as probably everyone knows that went through the pandemic, is a online tool to connect and have interactions, telecommunications, online internet connections, same as Skype, Google Meet. And why Google Docs? Well, for me, when I use Google Docs, I tend to use it for online teaching and writing down feedback for potential students. So always consider what sort of tools you're going to be using when it comes down to online teaching, and this will certainly help you. And have a think about Calendly as well. The next step is also to think about pricing your online lessons. Now, you need to consider that the average hourly rate, and this is not looking at any particular suggestions, but the average rate at the moment is between $15 to $40 per hour. Um, Obviously, you need to think about the sort of experience that you have, the qualifications, and the reviews as well. And so, when it comes down to the experience, as I first started today's live stream, I have, around 19 years teaching experience. I have a range of qualifications. So you need to think about what sort of qualifications do I have that can help students when it comes down to online teaching? And do you have any reviews? And if you do have reviews, this will certainly help you to promote. And if I go back in my presentations slightly, do I have anything? No. So here you can see, the tools that I've used for online teaching for the past 10 years, etc. Okay. So think about, your experience, qualifications, and your reviews. And this all counts when it comes down to pricing your online lessons. Now, if you don't have any experience, if you have, the initial qualifications to teach online, and nowadays it's pretty much open for all to run their own online teaching business. You can think about, how do I fare in this average rate? Am I around $20 per hour, or am I nearer towards $40 per hour? Only you will know this. And you also need to think about, what's your particular niche? So, are you going to be teaching business English? And if you're going to be teaching business English, this obviously demands a higher rate compared to, maybe general English. Are you going to be teaching something more specific like medical English or legal English, exam preparation? All this has a factor on what your average hourly rate is. Another thing that you need to consider is, are you going to be doing it full time? And if you're going to be doing it full time, then what would be a more appropriate rate for teaching? If you're going to be doing it on the side, are you going to be more comfortable with maybe a slightly competitive rate, a lower rate? So all this needs to be taken into consideration when when you think about pricing your own online lessons. Now, just to give you a bit of context, on Preply, for example, they have the average price. So here, for example, on the left, we have the average price on Preply and the type of lesson. Is it beginner, intermediate, is it advanced? So for beginners, it's around $15 an hour, intermediate 16, advanced 17. So I suppose here the advanced students know exactly what they want. They're willing to pay a higher price for a better quality. for lower level students, they're willing to pay a lower price, because they might not necessarily have the experience of a range of different teachers. They're just entering into language learning. Now, we have the specialities here. We've got business English, and that demands $17 an hour. We have speaking practice, which is, the bare basics, $16 an hour. We have intensive classes, so 3 or 4 lessons a week, $20 an hour. So that's the highest one there so far. We've got TOEFL practice, IELTS practice, around the same, $19, $18 an hour. And then we got CAE, the Cambridge, Advanced English Preparation Exam. CAE, just bear with me. So it's the C1 Advanced exam from Cambridge. That is $24 an hour. So if you have the qualifications, you have the experience, and you're comfortable teaching perhaps the AE or IELTS preparation, you can demand more than maybe just speaking practice. But there's nothing wrong with just diving into speaking practice, particularly on Preply and other platforms. Right, we're into step 2. Before we continue, we did have a question here from Natasha, and it was, how do you handle stubborn students? So stubborn students, particularly those that are a bit more difficult to deal with. As I mentioned before, then try and speak to particular students privately, one-to-one, have a sort of tutorial, and give them some advice, and then be open to what sort of things that they would suggest as well, and have that negotiation with that particular stubborn student. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But we're a third of the way through today's live stream, and we're looking at finding students. Now, finding students. If you have no experience, but you have maybe the minimum qualifications required to teach online, you can start teaching immediately. So, for example, on Preply, Hujiang, Today BC, Twenix, the recommendation is for just starting is to have native level ability of English, and complete maybe a couple of free courses, and then this would set you in good standing to just start teaching without any experience. So when I first started teaching online, I started, as I mentioned at the beginning, with Tutor ABC. That gave me the sort of experience that I needed when it came down to teaching online. I moved on from Tutor ABC to Hujiang, which paid me a slightly better rate. And then from Hujiang, I left, and I decided to go at my own with either private students or with Preply. And I decide the rate that I want to teach, and that's been my journey as an online English teacher. But feel free to share your experience of teaching, and particularly online. If you have some experience of teaching, you're going to be looking at getting reviews. And I always recommend my students, particularly here on Preply, as you can see, to your advantage. Post things on Instagram, share it on Facebook and other social media of particular reviews from your current students, and encourage a call to action as well. Right, we got another question here. Keep them coming. So we got Kofi. Does Tutor ABC hire non-native speakers? At the time that I was teaching, they would hire a range of teachers, regardless of their nationality, um, and regardless of their location, to teach English to students, particularly young learners. Now, the industry's kind of changed slightly in China, but um, at the time that I was working for them, they had a range of both native and non-native speakers, and they would pay dependent on the location, qualifications, experience, etc., etc. So it's always a good opportunity to consider, would Tutor ABC or VIP Kid is another one that would be hiring native and non-native speakers as well. So consider this because it gets your foot in the door for online teaching, and then you have the opportunity to use the reviews for your advantage, like here. So yes, from my understanding, Kofi, Tutor ABC does hire non-native English teachers. Yeah. But yeah, good question. Thank you ever so much. We're going to move on to our next part. So, just as a reminder, work on these platforms, get the reviews coming in, and start to post those reviews online for other potential students, and encourage a call to action. So, if you want to have a trial lesson with me, book through Calendly and have a quick 5-10 minute trial lesson. And then that's your pitch to try and encourage students to sign up for 10 lessons a month or 20 lessons a month, or, book in dependent on their availability and your availability as well. Right. We're going to move on to step 3. So growing as a professional. And this is a 3-step journey when it comes down to teaching online, and the best steps to consider growing your business to teach. As I mentioned, the hourly rates on Preply were these, the average hourly rates. They may seem quite low, but you got to think about, the amount of tutors on Preply and the amount of tutors that are maybe have a lower threshold for experience, qualifications, and subject knowledge is quite low. So, they may be charging between $10-15 an hour, whereas, more experienced tutors can demand a lot more. Yeah. So when you're growing your business as a professional, you need to think about how best to get other students to book with you. So when you have those initial students having lessons with you, you could offer a potential discount if they have other potential students to join classes with you. It's a good opportunity to broaden your network, and you can also get new students signing up and booking lessons with you. One way is through one-to-one lessons. The other opportunity is with group lessons. And with group lessons, you can have a variety of students in one class together. And with that, you could have the students um, joining you with a lower fee. So perhaps they all pay a lower hourly rate, say $5 each, and say you have 8 students in that class. All of them are paying $5 each. Let's say 8. Put it all together, that's $40 an hour. Um, so although everyone's paying a lower amount, you're earning more as an hourly rate with a group class than you would with maybe an individual online class. And say your average is going to be $20, you're going to be earning double that with group classes. So, group classes is a good way to grow your business and to develop that further. The other opportunity is to offer online lessons and for students to complete activities after their lessons. So, free handouts, PDFs, feedback, etc. And this gives added value to your business, and students would be more than happy to maybe pay a little bit more for access for grammar practice, vocabulary review, etc., etc. And this all gives an added value when it comes down to teaching online. Right. Do we have any other questions? Because we've kind of gone through the 3 steps to grow your business. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to respond to them individually. So today we've looked at 3 simple steps to grow your online teaching business without any experience needed. So today we've looked at 2 questions: handling stubborn students and Tutor ABC. Do they hire non-native speakers? Yes, they do, from my experience. But if anyone has any questions about teaching online, um, teaching in class, out of class, etc., feel free to ask me, as I'll be happy to share my experience, my advice with you. Right, quick coffee, and I'll wait for the questions. Wow. Okay, Kofi, you've just applied for Tutor ABC. Well done. Congratulations and good luck. And hopefully you'll be accepted and teaching in no time. Any other questions? Come on, get them going. Looking forward to your questions. I have a bit of a cold. Right. Okay, we got our next question. I'm a new math tutor on Preply. I want to know how to get more students without decreasing my price too much. This is kind of a bit of a chicken and egg situation, and something that I come across quite often is when potential, when new online teachers want to get more students, they think, okay, well, if I lower my price, that becomes more appealing for new potential students. But actually, it has the opposite effect. If you lower your price, and something that I was mentioning before, if I go across, if you're going to be choosing a plumber, for example, a reputable plumber, would you be willing to pay more with the understanding that you're going to be getting a good service, or are you going to be paying, or do you want to pay less? And how would you feel with paying more, and how would you feel with paying less? And if you want to pay a plumber to do a job, I would be quite comfortable to pay a good rate in with the idea that actually I'm going to be getting a good service. and it's the same for new new tutors on Preply. So I would recommend not reducing your rate. I would actually recommend increasing your rate, depending on your experience, your qualifications, and your reviews. If you have all three, then that would certainly help when it comes down to increasing your rate. If you're comfortable increasing that rate and you feel like, actually, I don't want to come across as an unprofessional maths tutor, increase the rate. You'll probably have more success at that than decreasing the rate. Kind of reaffirms potential students that this tutor's good because he's demanding a good rate, and look at his reviews, etc. And all this will certainly help. Right, we have another question from Gurgo Terek. What tools do you recommend to track students' progress and data? Good question. For me personally, you could create a database. You could use maybe Excel or the equivalent, some sort of spreadsheet where you put in the student and then you fill in certain information about what they've done in this lesson, that lesson, etc., etc. And then you could link in maybe the feedback from Google Documents if you're using the Google spreadsheets. That's one way of tracking student progress, and that's what I've done before. What I also tend to do is every month with the student, I tend to negotiate with the student, like, how do you feel your progress is developing? How do you feel like you're making the right progress at the right speed? Is there anything that you feel that you're not improving upon? And if that's the case, then I'm happy to consider that as well and put that into a private document, and then I can review that when I wish also. What tools, Notion, do you recommend to track students' progress and data? So for me, I use, for me personally, I use Google Documents. Notion is great. If you haven't used Notion before, it's a great database where you can incorporate lesson plans, ideas, share it with students, and they can see what they've looked at and what they've studied with. So Notion is great. It's a bit overwhelming for me because I'm not that good with Notion, if I'm to be honest, but I'm happy with Google Documents, and I can actually track certain things on Google Documents. And if I go through Google Drive at the moment, I go through my lessons, and here, for example, let me just share my screen. So here, as you can see, I have my Preply lessons. I've got lesson material, for example, and a variety of things. I've got here student needs analysis, and I share that with students also. And outside of that, I've got book lessons. If I go to 2025 and choose one of my students, you can see here I've got all the material that I've shared with the student from October last year up to now, 6th of February. So that's what I use to track my students when it comes down to teaching online, and that's what I feel comfortable with. So you choose a tool that you're comfortable with, and if you feel more comfortable with Notion, use that. If you have another online database or a technical tool that you feel more comfortable, use that, and you'll be good to go. But thank you for your question, Gurgo. Very good. Any other questions, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to share the sort of ideas that I've got. Yeah, today we've looked at 3 things to consider when it comes down to online teaching and growing your business. Now, I should mention a couple of things, so bear with me whilst I look at this. Is there a good teaching book or resource that I can use as a reference for teaching math? Wow, I was never good at maths. um, I know English, but when it comes down to maths, you perhaps have to negotiate with the student. What are they doing? Are they going to be studying towards a GCSE, A level, preparing for university exams, or what? Is there something that you would recommend for particular courses? If you're going to be teaching GCSEs, maybe find resources that look at maths tutoring, and that might help as well. Um, if it's A levels, then a recommended book for that. But for me, when it comes down to English teaching, I use my own material, or I use material that is on Lingua House, for example. I like Lingua House. I'm not sure if they have any. Actually, they don't have any maths material, which is a shame because it's a valid subject. But when it comes down to, teaching English, then, using Lingua House for me is the best. So as you can see here, for example, I've got Lingua House opened up. I can choose English. They've also got Spanish. So if there's any Spanish teachers here, feel free to look at Lingua House. I can go to General English, and the latest material available is this about sustainable fashion. Everything's available for here. You can download the worksheet. You can teach online. And if I were teaching online, you can access that as well. But Lingua House for me is certainly the best, and it's good value for money because they incorporate range material. You can see here there's a TED Ed video related to this course, this lesson, and you can share the PDF with the student. And what I tend to do is actually share the material before our class together and get the students to complete the vocabulary, the reading, the writing, etc., and then share that with, get the student to share it with me afterwards once they've studied it, and we'll review it together. And if the student's done well, then we look at the vocabulary, break it down, maybe look at word families, how things are connected with nouns, adjectives, adverbs, etc. All right. Really useful information for me, Martin. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't. It's great to have you here on board. A couple of things, though, when it comes down to my development, there's a couple of things that you could do to support this channel. You can either join, and here's a quick link, which is only available for 7 days. So you can join our Discord community, and just sharing it now. So you can join our Discord community and connect with me outside of these live streams, which I hold on a Saturday at 7 p.m. Korean time as well. Okay, do you find Preply the best teaching website, or are there any better alternatives? Well, for me to find private students, Preply is the best at the moment. I have connected with oh gosh, hundreds of students over the years that I've been using Preply. There's a reason why I keep using it again and again. If I can source private students, then I get students to recommend family, friends, and I offer a discount as well. Um, the only thing that you need to consider when it comes down to Preply is maybe their pricing commission structure. It all is available for those that want to try and teach, whether it's English, music, etc. And for me, as an English teacher, I find it a great platform. The only thing that I've noticed is that it's overwhelmed with so many tutors that want to teach English, and everyone's trying to race down to the bottom. But I would suggest trying to rise above that and charge more than what would be the average, as I shared on earlier today. Right. And as I mentioned, with the averages here, the average hourly rates on Preply, you can see here it's quite low, but this doesn't take into account the experience, the qualifications, and the ratings that you have. And if you've got good experience, good qualifications, good ratings, then you can demand more for your rate than the average here. Okay, so I do find Preply to be quite good as an alternative. Now, are there any others? I'm not sure, but you could promote yourself as an online maths tutor through Facebook. You could share a variety of things, so common mistakes that people make with maths, and you could share a particular reel or particular post, have a call to action. If you want to have online lessons with me, book a trial through Calendly here, and then it would get students booking up as well. Okay, right. There's a particular goal that I want to try and make, and it is, let's say, one super chat in 15 minutes. We have 15 minutes left, and I'll share a story from teaching. So I'm going to start the goal now because we have a quick thing here. Okay, so I've created the goal on YouTube, and we have 15 minutes remaining. Okay, English with Dania, thank you for joining. When preparing guided discovery handouts, what criteria should I use to assess these handouts? That's a that's a great question, actually. Something that I would recommend is to consider thinking about what do you want the students to achieve by the end of their lesson. If you want the students to achieve a particular objective by the end of that lesson or that discovery handout, think about what would that be. If you know the answer to that, then you will know how to get there, if that makes sense. If it's a grammar point that you want to focus on, then what sort of grammar point do you want the students to discover from that lesson? Is it going to be a news article with reported speech? And if it's a newspaper article, then within newspapers in English, it kind of jumps around depending on the chronological order. So it may start with the result of what happened. But then before that, you need to think back about the different criteria of what happened before and what led up to that result. So have a think about what you want to try and achieve with your hand out, and then that will give you the answer. Okay, our next question. Is it possible to try to take your private students to form a group? I don't see why not. If you have a group of students, let's say you have a set of students who are all the same level, then you could form them as a group, approach them individually, possibly. Then think about, once you have some uptake from potential students to form a group, you can then say, well, if you want to have a cheaper lesson rather than one-to-one, because I think one-to-one is great, but it demands a higher rate than maybe group lessons. If you want to have a group lesson for a lower rate, more competitive rate with me, with other students as well, so you can connect with them too, then let me know by such and such a date, or let me know by the end of today. Once you've got a consensus from potential students to form a group, and it's making your time worthwhile, then certainly try and form a group and have a trial lesson. Get the students to introduce each other together for 30 minutes, etc. And then you decide what's going to happen next. And then this will help alleviate the sort of pressure on you if it were one-to-one. Get the groups organized, working together. How would you organize it? Would you use Google Meet? Would you use Zoom? Would you use Skype? These are tools that you need to consider when it's teaching groups of students as well. But students may be curious about joining a group class together, because then there's that sense of community, camaraderie, where they help each other as well. But yeah, good question. Thank you, Amir. And I've noticed you've joined our Discord. So thank you, Amir, for joining. I did share the link previously. I did set a goal as well. And you can see here, I've got 10 minutes remaining. So one super chat, and if I have a super chat within 10 minutes, I'm going to share a story from my teaching. Not entirely sure what sort of story, but we'll see. Maybe my worst lesson observation. We'll see. But feel free to, if you're on YouTube, to add a super chat. That would be great. And I'll share my worst teaching experience that I've had in class, which is kind of embarrassing. If there are any other questions, feel free to let me know, because we got less than 10 minutes remaining. And so far, we've had a variety of different questions from Gurgo, Amir, Coffee, Natasha, English with Dania. Yeah, so thank you. When it comes down to tools, though, for me personally, if I'm teaching privately, I tend to use Google Meet. I have used Zoom, of course, for when everybody was in the pandemic. I had classes to deliver for universities, and Zoom was the tool for me. Again, I've used Skype numerous times, but Calendly, if you're not aware of Calendly, so Calendly, let me just sign in. And let me just share this screen already. Wow, we got less than 10 minutes remaining. So, Calendly. So here you can see scheduling ahead. You can sign up with Google or Microsoft. There's free sign-ups, but there's also pricing available. So you can see here one event type, one calendar, connect one calendar, availability, add video conferencing, booking page, mobile apps, browser extensions. If you go towards the paid version, then you can start to add in unlimited event types, multiple calendars, MailChimp, HubSpot, etc., and connecting Stripe and PayPal. So if you've got a small group of private students, you may want to consider the standard approach, the standard fee pricing model, when it comes down to getting students to book with you as well. Right. Have we had anyone? No. Created a goal. Let's have a look at the goal. It ends in 7 minutes. So one super chat, and I'll share a story from my teaching. But if there's any other questions, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer any queries that you have as well. One moment. Now, finally, for all those English teachers out there, I would recommend this particular book for grammar, particularly for students, and something that I've recommended my students as well, is English Grammar and Use by Raymond Murphy, and it is available here on Amazon. So if you don't have this book, I would recommend that you get it. It's a great resource. And when I have my private students start up with me, I say, these are the books that you should get. And if they get them, that's great. So English Grammar and Use for other students, particularly students from Southeast Asia, they will have a very good awareness of grammar, but then there's also English vocabulary in use. And English vocabulary in use is another book that I would recommend, depending on the level of the learner. Okay. Right. Okay. Yep, we've got someone else who's joined as well. Right, and we're heading towards the end of our live stream. Okay. Anyone? Nope. Less than 4 minutes remaining until I end this super chat. Goal, 4 minutes 47. Okay. Another question that we got from Kofi. Do you think the ESL industry is going to stay for a long time? Is it reliable? Well, I've been an English language teacher for over 19 years now. Obviously, during that time, things have evolved and changed. It's a fact of life that if you stay with what you know, things are going to change around you and you may not keep up. So in one form or another, yes, English teaching, English as a second language will be here, but it may not exist in the way that we see it now. So how do I see things evolving? Well, it may come to a point where, and it's pretty new with the the Apple Oculus Rift sort of thing, the virtual reality headset. It may come up to that point where individuals can connect with one another with avatars and that side of things. At the moment, we've just got the computer screen, but if we went back 20 years, online teaching didn't really exist as it did. There was phone English, and when I was teaching English in South Korea initially, there was a big push for businesswomen to have their English lessons by the telephone and have that speaking practice on the phone. It kind of was quite popular very quickly, but it disappeared very quickly as well. But what I've seen now, particularly since the pandemic, is that online education has become more reputable and recognized. Before the pandemic, it was considered not real teaching. And when I approached trainers and professionals, why don't we train English teachers to teach online? They said, well, it's not real English, it's not real teaching. But that all changed after the pandemic. And, the fact that I was able to gain experience before the pandemic kind of put me ahead compared to those that didn't have that experience. So try and keep up with the technology, the developments in English language teaching, and it will remain reliable and rewarding financially as well. But yes, it's going to stay. Right. English with Dania, thanks a lot. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. If you have any final questions before we finish off in a few minutes, that would be great. We've got 1 minute remaining. Having that final super chat. Come on. 1 minute. And I'll share a quick story about my worst observed teaching experience when I first started teaching. And yeah. Right. But if there are any final questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll finish off for today. Okay, how do you deal with students that don't focus in class? Sometimes they ignore the class and keep playing on their computer. You mean their smartphones? Well, if that's the case, what I've started doing, particularly for students who have to improve their English, is to place their phones at the front of the desk. Unfortunately, I get all the students to place their phones at the front of the desk. Once they've put their phones at the front of the desk, they don't have access to them. And I normally walk around the classroom to see whether they're on task. And if they're not on task, then I kind of remind them to focus. Or I look around and I stop what I'm doing. I don't say anything and I just look at them. Normally people will be like, shh, 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 come on, hurry up. Shh, he's looking at you. Oh, come on. If they have their phones and, if they're adult students and you can't ask adults to put their phones at the front of the class, then, again, and they're on their phones and playing away and not really focused, again, I will just stop what I'm doing and I will just watch them and look at them. Occasionally, depending on larger classes, if you have a teaching assistant to help you monitor whether students are on task, then they can also be the eyes and ears for you as well. Right. Do we have any final questions before we finish off for today? But thank you for the questions, Amir. Thank you for joining. It was great to have everybody join today. I was really pleased to get my main camera working. Previously, it was either my laptop, which is just below here, but I'm really pleased with the quality, and hopefully you like the quality of today's live stream as well. So I'm really happy with that. If you have any final questions, feel free to ask. Unfortunately, we've run out of our goal ended one super chat. Anyhow, next week, I'll be around next week. So I hope you have a wonderful week, a lovely weekend, rest of the weekend, and happy teaching, everyone. I'll see you in our next live stream, episode 3. And if you have any requests for next week's live stream, feel free to add a comment, and I'll consider suggestions for today's or next week's live stream. Okay, take it easy, stay safe, and happy teaching. Bye-bye.